Billionaire husband orders steak at restaurant, waitress slips him a note that destroys their marriage. I was 34 years old when my entire world collapsed between the appetizer and the main course. November 18, 2023. 7:42 p.m. I remember the exact time because I glanced at my watch just before the waitress handed me a folded napkin that would expose an $847,000 fraud, destroy my 7-year marriage, and reveal that the woman I loved had been systematically planning my financial destruction for the past 18 months. I sat across from my wife Elena at the Sterling Oak, an upscale steakhouse on Larimer Street in downtown Denver. The kind of place where a ribeye costs $89 and a glass of wine runs $24. I had saved for 3 months to afford this dinner on my high school math teacher salary of $58,000 a year. Tonight was supposed to be special. Our 7th anniversary. 7 years of marriage, 9 years together total. I had planned this dinner for weeks, made the reservation a month in advance, even bought a new tie, and nothing expensive, just something from Kohl's that cost $34, but it was blue, Elena's favorite color. She had forgotten. I'd reminded her that morning over breakfast, watching her scroll through emails on her phone while her coffee grew cold. Tonight's the Sterling Oak, remember? Our anniversary dinner. She'd looked up with a distracted half smile I'd grown accustomed to over the past year. Right. 7 years. I'll try to leave work early. She hadn't left early. She'd shown up 20 minutes late, still in her work clothes, a navy blue Armani suit that cost $1,800, her Cartier bracelet catching the candlelight as she typed on her phone. The bracelet was a $12,000 gift from her parents for her 30th birthday. I couldn't afford to buy her jewelry like that. I couldn't afford to buy her jewelry at all, really. Not on my salary. Elena pulled in $180,000 annually as a commercial real estate broker. 3 times what I made. She never let me forget it, though she never said it directly. It was in the little things, the way she'd sigh when I suggested a moderately priced restaurant, the way she'd buy herself expensive things without mentioning it, the way she'd stopped asking my opinion on financial decisions sometime around our 5th anniversary. I'll have the filet mignon, medium rare, Elena told our waitress without looking up from her iPhone. And another martini. The waitress was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes and auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her name tag read Sophie. The 8-ounce or the 12-ounce? Sophie asked politely. The 12-ounce, obviously. Elena's tone made Sophie flinch, and I felt a familiar wave of embarrassment wash over me. I'll have the ribeye, medium, I said, trying to smile at Sophie warmly enough to apologize for my wife's rudeness. And thank you. Sophie nodded, her expression softening slightly as she collected our menus and walked away. Elena was already back on her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. I watched her face illuminated by the blue light, the face I'd fallen in love with at a friend's barbecue 9 years ago. She'd been different then. Warmer. She used to laugh at my terrible math jokes. She used to hold my hand in public. She used to look at me like I mattered. I couldn't remember the last time she'd looked at me like that. Everything okay at work? I asked, trying to make conversation. She didn't look up. Oh, yeah. Just this deal closing tomorrow. The Morrison Properties thing. It's worth $4.2 million in commission if I can get them to sign. That's great, honey. Yeah. She kept typing. I looked around the restaurant instead. The Sterling Oak was beautiful, dark wood paneling, crisp white tablecloths, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. The other couples around us seemed happy, leaning toward each other, laughing, holding hands across tables. I wondered what that felt like anymore. When Sophie returned with our drinks 10 minutes later, she set Elena's martini down with professional precision. Then she placed my water glass on the table, and as she did, a folded cocktail napkin fell into my lap. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. Something in her expression, urgency, sympathy, fear, made my stomach clench. She gave the smallest nod toward the restrooms, then walked away without a word. I looked down at the napkin in my lap, my heart suddenly pounding for reasons I couldn't explain. Elena was still absorbed in her phone, typing something that made her smile in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. I unfolded the napkin under the table, keeping my movements casual. The handwriting was small, urgent, and the words made my blood run cold. I'm so sorry to do this. Your wife has been coming here every Tuesday and Thursday for 16 months with a man named Richard Hartwell. They sit in booth 12. Last week, I overheard them discussing divorce papers and how she's hidden $340,000 in an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. She called you a financial anchor and said you'd never see it coming. I have photos. Men's room. 5 minutes. I'm doing this because my dad got destroyed in a divorce. I couldn't watch it happen to someone else without trying to help. Sophie. The napkin trembled in my hands. The restaurant noise, clinking silverware, murmured conversations, smooth jazz, became a distant roar, like I was hearing it from underwater. My vision tunneled until all I could see was Elena's face across the table. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time in years, I saw a stranger. Her honey blonde hair, professionally styled that morning at a salon that charged $200 per appointment. Her perfectly manicured nails, $85 every 2 weeks. The way she'd stopped saying we and started saying I sometime in the past year. The way she'd insisted I wasn't invited to her company holiday party last December because it was just boring real estate talk. The way she'd stopped wearing her wedding ring 6 months ago because it catches on paperwork. She called you a financial anchor. You'd never see it coming. Paul? Are you even listening? I blinked. Elena was staring at me with irritation. What? I said I might have to fly to San Francisco next week. The Morrison Properties deal. It's worth $4.2 million in commissions if it closes. She took a long sip of her martini. You'll be fine on your own for a few days, right? I know you have that parent-teacher conference thing. Parent-teacher conference thing. She'd stopped remembering the details of my job around the same time she'd stopped wearing her wedding ring. Sure, I managed. I'll be fine. Good. She glanced around impatiently. God, I'm starving. Where's the food? I excused myself to the restroom, my legs unsteady beneath me. The napkin was crumpled in my pocket, its words burning through the fabric like a brand. The men's room was empty except for Sophie, who was standing near the sinks, her phone in her hand. She looked nervous, glancing at the door every few seconds. I'm so sorry, she said immediately when she saw me. I debated for weeks whether to tell you. But I've been working here for 2 years, putting myself through law school, and I've seen what happens when one spouse hides assets. My dad, her voice cracked. My dad lost everything. His house, his retirement, his car, everything. Because my mom's lawyer was 3 steps ahead and he never saw it coming. He didn't know she'd been planning it for years. She showed me her phone. Photo after photo. Elena and a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, laughing over wine. Elena and the same man holding hands across a table. Elena and the man kissing in the parking lot beside a black Mercedes S-Class, a car that cost approximately $115,000. The timestamp spanned from June 2022 to just last week, November 14, 2023. 16 months. She'd been doing this for 16 months. That's Richard Hartwell, Sophie explained, her voice low. He owns Hartwell Commercial Properties. He's worth about $23 million, according to Denver Business Journal. He comes in here all the time. Tips exactly 15% every time and treats the staff like we're invisible. She swiped to another photo. This one was from last Tuesday. In the image, Elena and Richard sat in a corner booth, booth 12, I realized, with papers spread between them. Sophie zoomed in. I could make out letterhead, Davidson and Klein, attorneys at law. I couldn't hear everything, Sophie continued, but I heard her say she'd been moving money into an account he helped her set up. She said something about at least $340,000 so far and that you'd signed some papers without reading them carefully. Something about a business investment you thought was legitimate. My mind raced backward. 8 months ago. Elena had brought home documents about investing in a property development deal. It's through my firm, she'd said. Completely legitimate. We both sign, we both benefit. It's a spousal investment LLC. Tax advantages. I trusted her. I'd signed. There's more, Sophie said quietly. She looked like she might cry. 2 weeks ago, I heard them talking about the divorce timeline. She said she was planning to file in January, right after the holidays, because she swallowed. Because it would look better if she at least pretended to try through Christmas. She said her attorney told her that Colorado is an equitable distribution state, but with the right documentation, she could prove most of the assets were hers alone. I leaned against the sink, my reflection in the mirror showing a man who suddenly looked 10 years older than he had an hour ago. Why are you helping me? I asked. You don't even know me. Sophie's eyes glistened with tears she was fighting to hold back. Because I watched my dad lose his house, his savings, and nearly lose his will to live. He was a music teacher. Made $52,000 a year. My mom was a pharmaceutical sales rep making $160,000. She paused. Sound familiar? It sounded exactly familiar. When they divorced, he discovered she'd been hiding money for 3 years. She got the house, a $580,000 property in Boulder, the cars, everything. He ended up in a 1-bedroom apartment eating ramen, working 2 jobs just to make child support payments. I was 17. I saw what it did to him. I watched him break. She pulled out a small USB drive from her apron pocket and pressed it into my hand. I copied all the photos here. Dates, timestamps, everything. I also wrote down every conversation I overheard, with dates and times. Take it. Get a lawyer before she files. A good one, not some $200 an hour general practice attorney. You need a shark. Someone who specializes in hidden assets and complex divorces. I stared at the USB drive. It was small, innocuous. It contained the evidence of my wife's betrayal. I started. I can't afford that kind of lawyer. Not on my salary. Sophie pulled out her phone and typed something quickly, then showed me the screen. A contact entry. My law school roommate is Cassandra Martinez. She graduated top of her class at Denver Law, works at Preston and Associates downtown. They handle high net worth divorces and cases involving asset fraud. Her direct line is 720-555-0147. She made sure I had it memorized. Call her tomorrow. Tell her Sophie Brennan sent you and show her what's on that drive. She'll know what to do. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat had closed up completely. Sophie checked her phone. You need to get back. You've been gone almost 6 minutes. Don't let her get suspicious. Act normal. Don't change anything. Don't confront her. How much do I owe you for? You don't owe me anything, Sophie interrupted firmly. Just promise me you'll fight. Don't let her take everything you've worked for. Don't let her break you like my mom broke my dad. She paused, her voice softening. And when this is over, when you've got your life back, maybe send my dad a message. His name is Robert Brennan. He still teaches music at Boulder Creek High School. Let him know that someone won the battle he lost. It might help him heal. I nodded again, my eyes stinging. I promise. I slipped the USB drive into my pocket and returned to the table, where Elena was texting furiously, her second martini already half empty. Took you long enough, she muttered without looking up. Food just arrived. I looked down at my $89 ribeye and felt my stomach turn. Across from me, Elena cut into her $76 filet mignon with the same precision she apparently used to dismantle our marriage. Methodical. Calculated. Cold. Everything okay? She asked, not looking up from her phone. Everything's fine. But I was already doing the math. 7 years of marriage. Joint accounts with approximately $127,000. Our townhouse in Capitol Hill, purchased for $465,000, now worth about $620,000, with $280,000 remaining on the mortgage. My retirement account, $89,000. Her retirement account, supposedly $340,000. If she'd hidden $340,000, what else had she hidden? What other accounts existed that I didn't know about? How much of our money had she systematically transferred into accounts where my name appeared as a co-investor but she controlled everything? "You're being weird," Elena said, finally looking at me. Her blue eyes, the eyes I'd once thought were the most beautiful things I'd ever seen, now looked cold. "Calculating. What's wrong?" I picked up my fork. "Just thinking about the San Francisco trip." "When are you leaving?" "Tuesday." "Back Friday." She smiled, the same smile I'd fallen in love with 9 years ago at that friend's barbecue. The same smile she'd used to convince me to sign those documents 8 months ago. "Why?" "Going to miss me." Something like that. What Elena didn't know was that I taught AP calculus and statistics. I spent my days teaching teenagers how to identify patterns, analyze data, and solve complex problems. I'd helped kids get into MIT, Stanford, Princeton. I wasn't the simpleton she apparently thought I was. I'd already started calculating timelines. Tuesday and Thursday dinners for 16 months meant approximately 140 meetings with Richard Hartwell. If each dinner cost $200 minimum at a place like the Sterling Oak, that was $28,000. Where had that money come from? Not from our joint account. I would have noticed withdrawals that large. She had to have another account. Probably several. "I'm exhausted," Elena announced, pushing her half-eaten steak away. "Can we just get the check and go?" The bill came to $267.89. I paid with our joint credit card, the one tied to our shared Chase account, a card I now suspected was just one of many she controlled. I left Sophie a $60 cash tip, every dollar I had in my wallet, and wrote on the receipt, "Thank you for everything." Sophie met my eyes as we left. She gave me a small, encouraging nod. In the car, Elena immediately took a phone call. "Richard, hi." She laughed at something he said, completely oblivious to me sitting 3 feet away. "Yeah, dinner was fine." Paul was in one of his moods. Another laugh. I know. Just a few more weeks and then it won't matter." I gripped the steering wheel tighter and said nothing. I drove our $32,000 Honda Accord, the practical car we'd bought together 3 years ago, the car Elena had complained about because it wasn't impressive enough for her client dinners, while my wife chatted with the man she was leaving me for. The man worth $23 million who drove a $115,000 Mercedes. They had no idea what was coming. When we got home to our townhouse on Gilpin Street, Elena went straight to her home office and closed the door. Through it, I could hear her voice, low and intimate, talking to Richard. Planning their future. A future that didn't include me. I went to my own small office, the converted guest room where I kept my teaching materials, my stacks of ungraded calculus tests, my collection of math competition trophies from students I'd coached over the years. I plugged in the USB drive. 247 photographs. Spreadsheet documents titled Asset Distribution Timeline.xlsx and Marital Property Division.doc. Email screenshots between Elena and her attorney, Jeremy Klein, discussing strategies to minimize his share and maximize separate property claims. One email, dated October 3, 2023, made my hand shake. Jeremy. Per our discussion, I've successfully transferred an additional $75,000 to the Cayman account. Total now $340,000. Paul signed the LLC documents without reading them, as expected. The property investment story worked perfectly. By the time he realizes the investment doesn't exist, we'll have filed and frozen everything. His teaching salary is embarrassing. The court will see I'm the primary earner. We should be able to argue that most marital assets came from my income and career. Also, confirm that Richard is willing to testify about the property development partnership if needed. It gives us cover for the money trail. Paul is too trusting. Frankly, too stupid to figure any of this out before it's too late. See you Tuesday at 2 p.m. to finalize the January filing timeline. Too trusting. Too stupid. I stared at those words for a long time. I wasn't stupid. I had a master's degree in mathematics from the University of Colorado. I published papers on innovative teaching methods. I helped students who struggled with basic algebra eventually master calculus. I taught kids how to think critically, analyze problems, and find solutions. But I'd been blind. Blinded by love, by trust, by the belief that my wife was my partner. That ended tonight. I picked up my phone and dialed the number Sophie had given me. It rang 4 times before someone answered. This is Cassandra Martinez. Ms. Martinez, my name is Paul Stratton. Sophie Brennan told me to call you. I need a lawyer who specializes in hidden assets and divorce fraud, and I need one tonight. There was a pause. Then, Sophie Brennan. Bobby Brennan's daughter. Yes. Where are you right now? Home. But my wife doesn't know I know anything yet. Good. Keep it that way. Don't change your behavior. Don't let her suspect anything. Her voice was crisp, professional, commanding. Can you meet me at my office tomorrow morning? 6 a.m., before you go to work. Preston and Associates, 1801, California Street, Suite 4200. I'll be there. Bring everything. Bank statements, investment documents, anything you've signed in the last 2 years. And bring whatever Sophie gave you. I will. Mr. Stratton. She paused. One more thing. Don't underestimate what you're up against. If your wife has been planning this for 18 months, she's got a strategy, probably a sophisticated one, designed by people who do this professionally. I felt my jaw tighten. But here's what she doesn't know, Cassandra continued, and I could hear the steel in her voice. I love destroying strategies. I'll see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. sharp. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my office. Down the hall, I could still hear Elena laughing with Richard, planning my destruction, celebrating her brilliant scheme. She thought she was 3 moves ahead. She had no idea I'd just learned the entire playbook. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. And Paul Stratton, high school math teacher with a $58,000 salary, was about to teach his $180,000 earning wife a lesson in consequences. I arrived at Preston and Associates at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes early, carrying a weathered backpack filled with 7 years of financial documents I'd spent the night gathering while Elena slept. The office occupied the entire 42nd floor of a gleaming downtown tower, with views of the Rocky Mountains that would be spectacular once the sun came up. The reception area alone probably cost more than my annual salary to furnish: sleek leather chairs, original artwork on the walls, a reception desk made of some kind of exotic wood that seemed to glow from within. Cassandra Martinez met me personally at the elevator. She was maybe 40, wearing a charcoal grey suit that screamed competence, and a silver watch that I recognized as an Omega Seamaster, approximately $6,500. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional twist, and her eyes were sharp, assessing, missing nothing. Her handshake was firm. Coffee, she offered, leading me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below us, lights still twinkling in the pre-dawn darkness. Please. She poured 2 cups from an expensive-looking machine that probably cost more than my car payment. The coffee was exceptional, dark and rich, nothing like the break room swill at school. Sophie called me last night after you did, Cassandra said, settling into a chair across from me. Told me what she witnessed. What she gathered. She paused. Her father, Bobby, is one of my favorite people on this planet. What happened to him shouldn't happen to anyone. She fixed me with that sharp gaze. So let's make sure it doesn't happen to you. Show me everything. I spent the next 90 minutes walking through 7 years of marriage. Joint accounts, investment statements, tax returns, the documents Elena had brought home 8 months ago for the property development deal. I showed Cassandra the USB drive's contents, the photos, the emails, Sophie's handwritten notes documenting every conversation she'd overheard. Cassandra took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally stopping me to ask questions that revealed just how thoroughly Elena had been preparing. This LLC document, she said, holding up the papers Elena had brought home. Pinnacle Development Investments LLC. You signed as a member. She pointed to a section of dense legal text. But look at this clause here, paragraph 12.4. In the event of dissolution of marriage, all member interests vest solely with the member whose name appears first on the articles of organization. My stomach dropped. Whose name appears first? Elena's. So I signed away my interest in a company that supposedly doesn't exist. According to these emails, Cassandra finished, but legally does exist for the purpose of holding money. Money that came from marital funds but is now structured as her separate property. She made a note on her legal pad. This is sophisticated. She didn't draft this herself. Her attorney helped her build this trap, and you walked right into it. I felt sick. How much trouble am I in? On a scale of 1 to 10. Cassandra considered for a moment. 7. But here's the good news. She made mistakes. She got arrogant. She pulled out her laptop and began typing rapidly. First, Colorado is an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. That means the court divides assets fairly, not necessarily equally. But fairly also means the court considers factors like, she ticked them off on her fingers, each spouse's contribution to marital assets, economic circumstances, whether one spouse helped the other's career or education, and crucially, whether either spouse wasted or dissipated marital assets. She looked up at me. Hiding $340,000 in an offshore account counts as dissipation. Big time. Can we prove it? Cassandra smiled, and I saw why she'd graduated top of her class. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who'd just spotted prey. Mr. Stratton, she literally wrote in an email that you were too stupid to figure it out. That's not going to play well in front of Judge Morrison, who happens to preside over most high-asset divorce cases in Denver District Court and who has very strong feelings about asset fraud. She opened a file on her laptop. Here's what we're going to do. Today is Friday. You said Elena is flying to San Francisco on Tuesday. That's what she said. Perfect. Cassandra's fingers flew across the keyboard. While she's gone, we're going to do something called forensic accounting. I have an investigator named Michael Torres who specializes in finding hidden money. He's expensive, $3.50 an hour, but he's worth every penny. We're also going to file for an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets. But we're going to time it perfectly. I shifted uncomfortably. I can't afford $350 an hour. I can barely afford you. Cassandra held up a hand. Our firm handles some cases on contingency for asset fraud. If we win and recover hidden assets, we take 30% of what we find beyond the standard marital split. You don't pay unless we find money. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. And trust me, Mr. Stratton, we're going to find money. What about the townhouse? The joint accounts? All protected for now. We'll file the emergency motion while she's in San Francisco. By the time she lands on Friday, every asset she controls will be frozen pending a full forensic audit. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountains now touched with the first pink light of dawn. Your wife thinks you're a pushover. She thinks you'll roll over and accept whatever she offers because you don't have the money or the sophistication to fight back. That's her mistake. She turned back to me. We're going to use her arrogance against her. Over the next 4 days, I lived a double life. At school, I taught AP Calculus. I graded papers. I met with parents about their children's college applications. I coached the math team through practice problems. I was the same Mr. Stratton my students had always known, patient, encouraging, maybe a little too fond of math puns. At home, I was the same husband Elena expected. Quiet. Unassuming. Easy to ignore. She didn't notice that I'd started documenting everything. What time she came home. Who she called. Every mention of Richard, San Francisco, or business trips. Every time she went to her home office and closed the door. On Sunday night, she was on the phone with Richard for 2 hours. I sat in the living room pretending to watch football while she laughed and planned in the next room. I know, I heard her say. Just 2 more months and then we can finally be together. Paul won't know what hit him. I gripped the TV remote so hard I thought it might crack. Monday night, she barely spoke to me at all. She came home at 9 p.m., said she'd grabbed dinner with a client, and went straight to bed. I lay beside her in the dark, listening to her breathe, thinking about 7 years of marriage. Our wedding day at the Denver Botanic Gardens. Our honeymoon in Italy. The night we closed on the townhouse and ate pizza on the floor because we didn't have furniture yet. When had she decided I wasn't enough? When had she started looking at me and seeing nothing but a financial anchor? I didn't sleep that night. Tuesday morning, Elena left for San Francisco. I drove her to Denver International Airport at 6 a.m., kissed her cheek, told her to have a safe trip. I'll be back Friday, she said, already texting. There's leftover Thai food in the fridge. Have a safe flight. She didn't look back as she walked into the terminal. The moment her plane took off at 7:35 a.m., I tracked it on FlightAware. I called Cassandra. She's gone. Excellent. Meet Michael Torres at your house in 1 hour. He's going to need access to her home office and all her electronics. Michael Torres was a former FBI forensic accountant who now made $280,000 a year helping divorce lawyers find hidden money. He arrived at my townhouse with 2 large equipment cases and a tablet computer, looking like a very well-dressed burglar. Standard procedure, Michael explained, setting up in Elena's office. I'm going to image her computer hard drive, clone any devices she left behind, and go through every document in this office. We're looking for account statements, passwords, correspondence with her attorney, anything that shows where money went and how. Is this legal? It's your marital residence and your marital property. She's your wife. In Colorado, you have a legal right to access marital financial information. We're not hacking anything. We're just looking at what's already here. It took Michael 6 hours. When he finished, he had filled 3 USB drives with data and had a preliminary report that made my blood boil. Your wife is extremely organized, Michael said, a note of grudging admiration in his voice. Almost too organized. She kept spreadsheets detailing every transfer. Look at this. He showed me a spreadsheet titled the Asset Protection Timeline.xlsx. It detailed transfers going back 23 months. June 2022, $15,000 to Pinnacle Development LLC. July 2022, $22,000 to Pinnacle Development LLC. August 2022, $18,000 to Pinnacle Development LLC. September 2022, $25,000 to Cayman International Bank, account number 8479293. The list continued, month after month, until it reached $340,000, exactly as Sophie had said. These transfers all came from your joint investment account at Charles Schwab, Michael explained. She was slowly draining it, moving money in amounts small enough that you wouldn't notice unless you were specifically watching. She assumed you never checked the balance because she handled the investments. I felt like an idiot. She'd always said she was better with money, that she'd manage our investments because she understood the market better than I did. I trusted her. I'd been grateful, even, that she took care of things. There's more, Michael said. I found correspondence between her and Richard Hartwell. They're not just having an affair. They're business partners. He pulled up a document on his tablet. Hartwell Commercial Properties is buying a development site in Fort Collins for $8.7 million. Your wife invested $340,000 as a limited partner, except she used marital funds to buy into a business deal that's solely in her name. Can we get that money back? Michael smiled. Not just back. We can get her crucified in court. Using marital funds for separate business ventures without spousal consent is a major violation. Judge Morrison awarded triple damages in a similar case last year, Harris versus Harris. The husband hid $200,000 in a business deal. The wife got $600,000 plus attorney's fees. I did the math. Triple damages on $340,000 was $1,020,000. She doesn't have that kind of money, I said. No, Michael agreed. But Richard Hartwell does. And if we can prove he knowingly participated in helping her hide marital assets, he becomes liable too. Corporate veil piercing. His company, his personal assets, all fair game. That evening, I called Cassandra with an update. She listened to Michael's findings and went silent for a long moment. Mr. Stratton, I think we need to accelerate our timeline. I'm going to file an emergency motion Thursday morning while she's still in San Francisco. We're going to freeze everything, bank accounts, investment accounts, the Cayman account if we can reach it, and we're going to put a lien on the Fort Collins property investment. What will that do? Your wife is going to land Friday afternoon and discover her entire financial life is frozen. She won't be able to buy a cup of coffee without court approval. Won't that make her angry? Furious, Cassandra agreed. But anger makes people careless. And we need her careless, because we still don't know if there are other accounts. Michael found $340,000. I'd bet money there's more. Cassandra was right. On Thursday morning, while Elena was touring properties in San Francisco with Richard, I knew because she'd posted photos on Instagram of them at Fisherman's Wharf, looking like a happy couple on vacation. Cassandra filed a 47-page emergency motion in Denver District Court. The motion included evidence of the $340,000 in hidden transfers, copies of emails discussing asset concealment, the fraudulent LLC documents I'd signed, expert testimony from Michael Torres, Sophie's photographs and written timeline, a request to freeze all assets pending full forensic audit, a request for sanctions against Elena's attorney for participating in fraud. Judge Morrison granted the motion at 2:30 p.m. By 3 p.m., every account Elena controlled was frozen. The joint Chase account, frozen. The Charles Schwab investment account, frozen. Her individual Bank of America account, frozen. The Cayman account would take longer, international asset recovery was complicated, but Cassandra had already contacted specialists who dealt with offshore accounts. The Fort Collins deal closes Monday, Cassandra told me Thursday evening. Except it's not going to close, because we put a lien on it this afternoon. Hartwell Commercial Properties can't complete the purchase without clear title to all investor funds. Your wife's $340,000 just became a $340,000 paperweight that's blocking an $8.7 million deal. What happens when Richard finds out? That's where it gets fun. I could hear the smile in Cassandra's voice. Richard Hartwell is a businessman. He didn't become worth $23 million by being stupid. When he discovers that his mistress's marital drama is tanking his largest deal of the year, he's going to make a choice. And I guarantee that choice won't be standing by your wife. Elena's plane landed at Denver International Airport at 4:47 p.m. on Friday. I knew because I tracked it online. She texted me, landed. Getting an Uber. Be home in an hour. I sat in our living room waiting. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Cassandra had advised me to stay calm, document everything, and avoid confrontation. Elena walked in at 6:15 p.m., rolling her carry-on suitcase behind her. She looked exhausted and distracted, her phone in her hand as usual. "Hey," she said, barely glancing at me. "I need to make some calls." She went straight to her office. I heard her boot up her computer. Heard the click of her mouse as she navigated to her bank accounts. Heard the sharp intake of breath. And then heard the sound I'd been waiting for. What the fuck? Elena burst out of her office, her face pale, her phone in her hand. "Paul, something's wrong with the bank accounts. They're all frozen. There's some kind of court order." Her voice was rising, edging toward panic. "Do you know anything about this?" I looked at my wife. The woman I'd loved for 9 years. Married for 7. Trusted with everything. And I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "I know everything, Elena." She froze. "I know about Richard. I know about the $340,000. I know about the Cayman account. I know about the Fort Collins property deal." I kept my voice steady, controlled, the same voice I used when explaining a difficult concept to struggling students. "I know you've been planning to divorce me since at least June 2022. I know you called me a financial anchor. I know you said I'd never see it coming." I stood up. "Turns out I'm smarter than you thought." Her face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock. Fear. Anger. And finally, that calculating look I'd seen so many times before, the look of someone running numbers, figuring angles, trying to find a way to spin this. "I don't know what you think you know, but I have emails, Elena. Your emails to Jeremy Klein. I have the spreadsheets you created to track every transfer. I have photos of you and Richard at the Sterling Oak every Tuesday and Thursday for 16 months. I have testimony from witnesses. I watched her face go paler with each item. I have forensic evidence of $340,000 in fraudulent transfers. And as of 2:30 p.m. yesterday, I have a court order freezing every asset you control pending a full investigation. She sat down heavily on the couch, as if her legs had given out. How did you? Who told you? Does it matter? Her phone rang. She looked at the screen, Richard calling, and didn't answer. It rang again. And again. She turned it off. We can work this out, she said finally, and I heard something I'd never heard in her voice before, desperation. Paul, I made mistakes, but we can. No. The word hung in the air between us. We're done, Elena. You spent 18 months planning my destruction. You stole from our marriage. You committed fraud. You called me stupid, and you were so confident I'd never figure it out that you documented everything. I picked up my bag, I'd packed it that morning. I'm staying at a hotel. My attorney is Cassandra Martinez at Preston & Associates. All communication goes through her? Don't contact me directly. Don't come to my school. Don't try to touch any assets, because they're all frozen. Paul, please? 7 years, Elena. My voice cracked, just slightly, and I hated myself for it. I gave you 7 years of loyalty and love and trust. You repaid me by treating me like I was worthless. By planning to throw me away like garbage as soon as you had someone richer. I headed for the door. You wanted a divorce? Congratulations. You're getting one. Just not the one you planned. I left her sitting in our living room, her living room now, I supposed, her phone buzzing with ignored calls from Richard, her carefully constructed plan in ruins. As I drove away from the townhouse on Gilpin Street for what would be the last time as a married man, I felt something unexpected. Not sadness. Not vindication. Just relief. The weight of living a lie, even though I hadn't known it was a lie, lifted from my shoulders. My phone rang. Cassandra Martinez. How did it go? She knows. Good. Now here's what happens next. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Preston & Associates conference room. I sat beside Cassandra and Michael Torres, facing Elena and her attorney Jeremy Klein across the polished table. The view of the Rocky Mountains behind us was spectacular, but nobody was looking at it. Elena looked terrible. Her normally perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer suits. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Klein, by contrast, looked exactly like what he was, a $500 an hour divorce attorney in a $4,500 Bryony suit, with a Hermes tie that probably cost $295. He had the practiced arrogance of a man who'd spent 20 years winning by intimidation. I hoped he was ready to lose. Let's skip the pleasantries, Cassandra began, opening her portfolio. Mr. Klein, you've had the weekend to review the evidence we submitted with our emergency motion. You've seen the emails, the photographs, the financial records, and the expert analysis. So let's talk about what happens next. Klein adjusted his tie. Ms. Martinez, I think your client is overreaching. My client made some investments that... Your client committed fraud, Cassandra interrupted crisply. And you helped her do it. She slid a document across the table. That LLC document, the one where Mr. Stratton signed away his interest in paragraph 12.4. That's fraudulent inducement. You drafted a document designed to look like a joint investment vehicle while actually being a tool to strip marital assets. In Colorado, that's grounds for sanctions against an attorney. She paused. You could lose your license, Mr. Klein. Klein's face reddened. You have no proof that I have an email from October 3rd where Ms. Stratton tells you, and I quote, that her husband is too stupid to figure it out. And you respond, quote, that's why we structured it this way. Just make sure he doesn't ask too many questions before signing. End quote. Cassandra slid another printout across the table. That's consciousness of guilt, Mr. Klein. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. That's you becoming a defendant instead of an attorney. Elena stared at the table. Klein's face went from red to pale. Here's our offer, Cassandra continued. Miss Stratton will return all hidden assets, the $340,000, plus whatever else Mr. Torres finds in his complete audit. She will pay Mr. Stratton's attorney's fees, which currently stand at $37,500. She will surrender her interest in the Gilpin Street townhouse, valued at $340,000 in equity. She paused. In exchange, we won't pursue criminal fraud charges. We won't pursue sanctions against you, Mr. Klein. And we'll allow the Fort Collins property deal to proceed. That's insane, Klein sputtered. You're asking for everything. No, we're asking for what she tried to steal, plus consequences. Cassandra's voice was ice. Everything would be pursuing triple damages under Harris versus Harris precedent, which would mean $1,020,000, plus the townhouse, plus attorney's fees, plus sanctions. We're being generous. Elena finally spoke, her voice hollow. I don't have $340,000 in cash. It's all in the Fort Collins deal. Then Mr. Hartwell needs to return it, Cassandra said simply. His attorney has already agreed to cooperate fully. He'll wire the $340,000 to an escrow account today if we lift the lien. She smiled coldly. He's choosing his $8.7 million deal over you, Miss Stratton. I suggest you accept that reality. What about Richard? Elena asked. Her voice cracked. What about us? Cassandra pulled out her phone and played a voicemail. Richard Hartwell's voice filled the room. Victoria, this is Richard. My attorneys tell me your marital situation has created a massive liability for my company. The Fort Collins deal is at risk, and I've got investors threatening to pull out. I can't be associated with this. I think it's best if we don't see each other anymore. My lawyer will be in touch about returning your investment. Please don't contact me again. The message had been left Saturday night at 11:47 p.m. Elena's face crumpled. The calculating look was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before, genuine devastation. We were going to. He was going to enjoy your company until it became inconvenient, Cassandra said, not unkindly. Men worth $23 million don't risk their fortunes for love affairs, Miss Stratton. You were convenient until you were complicated. I watched my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, realize she'd lost everything. Richard was gone. Her scheme had failed. Her attorney was facing sanctions. Her accounts were frozen. The $340,000 she'd hidden so carefully was about to be returned. And Paul Stratton, quiet, trusting Paul, had outplayed her completely. I need to consult with my client, Klein said weakly. You have until 5 p.m. today, Cassandra responded. After that, we file additional motions for sanctions and refer the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. Fraud over $100,000 is a Class 3 felony in Colorado, Mr. Klein. That's for to 12 years in prison. They left the conference room in silence. In the hallway, I exhaled shakily. That was brutal. That was justice, Cassandra corrected. She tried to rob you of 7 years of savings, your home, and your dignity. All we did was expose the truth. At 4:32 p.m., Klein called. We accept your terms. The settlement was finalized over the next 2 weeks. Richard Hartwell's company wired $340,000 to an escrow account managed by the court. Elena signed a quitclaim deed for the townhouse. She paid my legal fees from her remaining liquid assets. The divorce was uncontested, finalized in 60 days, a Colorado record for a high-asset case, according to Cassandra. But the story didn't end there. Michael Torres completed his full forensic audit and discovered another $127,000 in a different offshore account. This one in Panama. Elena had been even busier than anyone realized. The additional discovery meant she owed me another $127,000, which she had to borrow from her parents. Her father, Thomas, a retired surgeon worth $3.2 million, was reportedly furious at his daughter's behavior. He paid the money but told her she was on her own from now on. Elena's career suffered too. Word spread in Denver's tight-knit commercial real estate community about the fraud case. Clients began requesting different brokers. Her firm quietly let her go in January 2024. Last I heard, she was working for a small residential agency in Aurora, making maybe $45,000 a year. The same salary she'd once called embarrassing. Jeremy Klein faced an ethics hearing with the Colorado Supreme Court Attorney Regulation Council. He received a 6-month suspension and a $50,000 fine for his role in drafting fraudulent documents. His reputation never recovered. Richard Hartwell's Fort Collins deal closed, but the scandal cost him. 2 major investors pulled out, citing concerns about his judgment. The development proceeded, but on a smaller scale. Sophie told me later that he'd lost approximately $4.5 million in projected profits because of the delays and investor withdrawals. Karma, as they say, is a mathematician. In March 2024, for months after that dinner at the Sterling Oak, I drove to Boulder Creek High School during my spring break. I found Robert Brennan in the music room, conducting an after-school jazz band practice. Through the window of the door, I watched him for a moment, a man in his late 50s with kind eyes exactly like his daughter's, waving a baton while teenagers coaxed music from trumpets and saxophones. I waited until practice ended, then introduced myself. "You're Sophie's dad." Robert Brennan's face showed surprise, then curiosity. "I am. Can I help you?" "Your daughter Sophie saved my life last November." I told him everything. The Sterling Oak. The napkin. The evidence Sophie had gathered at great personal risk. Cassandra Martinez. The fraud, the settlement, the justice. When I finished, Robert's eyes were wet. "She didn't tell me she'd done that," he said quietly. "She just said she was busy with law school." "She did it because of what happened to you," I said. "She watched you suffer through a divorce where you lost everything, and she couldn't let it happen to someone else." She told me about the house in Boulder. The apartment. The child support payments. I pulled an envelope from my jacket. "I wanted you to know that this time, the teacher won. The teacher didn't lose his house or his savings. The teacher got justice because your daughter was brave enough to intervene." Inside the envelope was a check for $25,000 and a letter explaining everything that had happened. "I can't accept this," Robert said, though his hands trembled holding the check. "You already did." I smiled. That money represents recovered assets I wouldn't have without Sophie. She refused any reward, so I'm giving it to the person who made her into someone willing to take that risk. Use it however you want. Pay off debt, take a vacation, donate it to the music program, whatever brings you peace. Robert broke down crying. I learned later that he'd been drowning in credit card debt from his divorce, almost $34,000, and the money cleared it entirely. For the first time in years, Robert Brennan was debt-free. In April, I met Sophie for coffee at a shop near DU Law School where she was finishing her final semester. "You changed my life," I told her simply. "Why did you really do it? You risked your job. You could have gotten in trouble. You didn't know me from Adam." Sophie stirred her latte, thinking. "I watched my dad become a ghost of himself after the divorce," she finally said. "He loved my mom. Trusted her completely. And she destroyed him. He had to sell his Chevy Tahoe, $28,000 he'd saved for years to buy our just to pay legal fees. He moved to an apartment that cost $950 a month. He ate ramen so he could afford child support for me and my brother." She looked up at me, her eyes fierce. I watched him cry at night when he thought I couldn't hear. I heard him on the phone with the suicide prevention hotline once, when things got really bad. My mom did that to him. Her greed, her lies, her lawyer who helped her hide everything. She shook her head. "When I saw you at that restaurant, looking at your wife with so much love while she sat there plotting your destruction, I saw my dad. And I thought, not this time. This time, someone is going to know the truth before it's too late. Even if it costs me my job. Even if I get sued. It's worth it." "You're going to be an amazing lawyer," I said. "I hope so." I want to help people like you and my dad. People who play by the rules and get crushed by people who don't." She smiled. "Cassandra offered me a job at her firm when I graduate. I accepted. I wasn't surprised." Cassandra recognized a kindred spirit. In May 2024, 6 months after that dinner at the Sterling Oak, I ran into Elena at a King Soopers grocery store in Capitol Hill. She was alone, pushing a cart with basics, pasta, canned sauce, cheap wine. She'd lost weight. Her clothes were from Target, not Neiman Marcus. Her hair, once professionally styled every week, looked like she'd cut it herself. "Paul. Elena." We stood in the pasta aisle, two people who'd once promised forever. "I wanted to apologize," she said quietly. She couldn't meet my eyes. "I know it doesn't mean anything now. But I was wrong. I was greedy and selfish, and I hurt someone who never deserved it. I threw away 7 good years because I wanted more. More money, more status, more excitement." She finally looked up. "And I lost everything that actually mattered." I looked at the woman I'd once loved and felt something unexpected: pity. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just sadness for what she'd become. "I forgive you," I said, surprising myself. "Not because what you did was okay. But because carrying anger around isn't worth it. You paid the price for your choices. That's enough." "Are you happy?" she asked. I thought about it. "Yeah, actually. I am. Teaching, grading papers, coaching the math team, living alone in a townhouse I actually own outright now. It's a good life." I smiled slightly. Turns out I didn't need fancy dinners and expensive cars and keeping up with everyone else. I just needed to be appreciated. And now I appreciate myself. Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry I couldn't see your worth." "Me too." I walked away, leaving my ex-wife in the grocery store. And I realized I meant what I'd said. I'd forgiven her. Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Epilogue: The view from here. That evening, I sat on the deck of my townhouse, fully paid off, mortgage burned, watching the sun set behind the Rockies. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Daniel, inviting me to a family barbecue next weekend. Mom wanted to see me. My niece missed her Uncle Paul. My nephew wanted help with his geometry homework. I'd spent so many years putting Elena first. Skipping family events because she found them boring. Missing my nephew's birthday parties because she had work functions I wasn't invited to. Drifting away from the people who actually loved me because I was trying so hard to make someone happy who couldn't be made happy by anything I had to offer. Now I could say yes to everything that mattered. I thought about Sophie Brennan, probably buried in law books preparing for the bar exam, ready to spend her career helping people like me and her dad. I thought about Robert Brennan, finally debt-free after years of struggling, maybe sleeping through the night without worrying about money for the first time since his divorce. I thought about Cassandra Martinez, somewhere in Denver, probably destroying another scheme, protecting another unsuspecting spouse from financial ruin. And I thought about the lesson I'd learned through all of this, the truth that had emerged from the wreckage of my marriage. Sometimes betrayal is a gift. It removes people who don't deserve you and makes space for people who do. Elena's scheme had destroyed our marriage, but it had freed me to build a life I actually wanted. The waitress who'd slipped me that napkin hadn't just saved my assets. She'd saved my future. Final statistics. Assets recovered, $467,000. Hidden accounts discovered, 2, Cayman Islands and Panama. Legal fees covered by opposing party, $37,500. Current mortgage balance, $0. Current happiness level, immeasurable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's letting people face the natural consequences of their own actions while you build something better. Elena wanted to destroy me to elevate herself. Instead, she destroyed herself while I rose from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and genuinely happy. Justice doesn't always look like courtroom victories and financial settlements. Sometimes it looks like a middle-aged math teacher sitting on a deck he owns, drinking coffee he can afford, planning a life he actually wants to live, surrounded by people who genuinely love him. That's the ending Elena never saw coming. And that's the ending I would choose every single time. The end.